Presenting our podcast, Got Milk, the Indian Dairy Context, brought to you by Shunya Agritech, India's first animal nutrition and well-being focused organization. Say hello to your hosts, Gear and Sahil.
All right, so today we're diving deep into something that's, I don't know, it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. It's all about India's potential as a global dairy, like giant, a powerhouse. And you've sent me this amazing stack of reports, research, all this stuff. And I have to say, the numbers are pretty wild. I mean, India is already the world's biggest milk producer, right? But it feels like they're like on the verge of something even bigger.
It's a really interesting, almost like a paradox when you think about it. They produce so much milk, but in the global export market, you don't really see them as much as you might expect. I mean, you're talking about a country that only makes up like 1% of global dairy exports.
Wow, 1%. That's a tiny slice of the pie for a country that produces that much.
Yeah.
So what's the deal? Are they just like super focused on their own domestic demand, or is there something else, some other factor that's kind of holding them back from, really going global?
Well, you're right. The domestic demand it's a huge factor. I mean, the reports are saying that India's own consumption of dairy is going to like skyrocket by 51% by 2027. But it's not just about feeding their own people, right? There are also these kind of deeper issues, structural stuff, logistical hurdles that have always kind of, I don't know, maybe held them back a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit. I'm seeing some themes pop up in these reports, things like quality control, the whole market being really fragmented, even just the basic infrastructure they need to get those products from the farms to tables in other countries.
You're hitting the nail on the head. They've got their strengths, right? Like butter, oil, skim milk powder, basic milk and cream. They do that well. But there's this need to up their game across the board when it comes to quality. They need to meet those international standards. Those are really strict.
And it's not just about meeting them, right? It's about going above and beyond.
Yeah.
Building a reputation, showing the world that their stuff is top-notch, consistent, because in a global market, consumers have so many choices. You've got to stand out.
Absolutely. You need a good reputation. And that reputation needs to be built on transparency, ethical practices. The research hints at this kind of trust deficit that exists between some international buyers and Indian exporters. So addressing that, perception issue, it's as important as, ticking all the technical boxes.
Okay, so it's a multidimensional problem, right? They need the right products, the right quality, and the right story to really break into the market. But before we jump into solutions, let's talk about those right products for a minute.
Some interesting potential stars are highlighted in the reports, like ghee, for example. Ghee is a really, really good example. I mean, it's a product that's already out there. People know about it. There's still so much untapped potential. It's popular in some regions, but the analysis suggests that if they expand strategically, go into markets like the USA, Canada, Southeast Asia, they could do really well.
Yeah, it feels like ghee could be like a flagship product for them, a way to introduce Indian cuisine to people who maybe aren't familiar with it. Those unique flavors.
Exactly. And another category with huge global demand is cheese. But the reports really emphasize that they need to focus on specific types, like processed cheese, that's classified as 040630, and then fresh cheese, which is 040610. I know those codes sound a bit like technical jargon, but those are the categories that really match what the global market wants, what people are actually eating.
So it's not just about churning out any old cheese. It's about understanding what people actually want, what those global cheese preferences are, and then, tailoring their production to fit that.
Exactly. And then there's this other interesting area. It's bulk and pack milk, especially the kind that has a long shelf life. There's a lot of demand for that, particularly in places like the Middle East, where the climate and just the logistics of things mean they need milk that can survive transportation and storage, without going bad.
Got it. So there's a theme here, right? It's about finding those specific niches, those markets where there's a real need, and then tailoring production to meet those needs. Yeah. What other products are they looking at?
Whole milk powder, WMP, is another big one. It's a key ingredient in tons of food products, and the demand for that is just exploding in rapidly developing economies like China and Southeast Asia.
Okay, so we got ghee, cheese, milk. That's a pretty delicious trio, and it sounds like they have the potential to make a real impact.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the human element here. The research mentions millions of small-scale dairy farmers, the folks who are the backbone of India's milk production.
Yeah, that's a crucial aspect. These small-scale farmers, they play such an important role, but they're often operating outside of the organized sector, so they face unique challenges, but also unique opportunities.
It's a good reminder that this isn't just about big companies and, export figures. It's about people's lives, livelihoods. It's about the potential to, like, lift entire communities up. So how can India empower these farmers, help them become key players in this global dairy journey?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll definitely dig into more as we go deeper. There's a lot to unpack there, from government schemes and funding to the need for training and access to like modern resources.
Okay, so we've set the stage, right? We've got a sense of the potential, the hurdles they got to overcome, and the human side of all this. Now let's roll up our sleeves and dive into those challenges. Let's start with, I guess, the most important thing, quality.
You got it. Quality is non-negotiable. It's everything in the global market. And the reports, they get into some fascinating detail about what goes into meeting those international standards. It's not just about the milk itself, it's about everything. Even the quality of the water used in production, that gets scrutinized.
Wow, so it's like a level of detail that most consumers probably don't even think about, but it's that attention, that meticulousness that ultimately builds trust and ensures a safe, high-quality product.
Exactly. And again, it's not just about checking the boxes, it's about going above and beyond, showing that India is committed to excellence.
So there's a real chance here for them to not just meet those standards, but to like set a new bar, a new benchmark for quality in the global dairy market. But of course, quality comes at a cost, right?
Yeah.
So how does India balance those really strict requirements with the need to be, price competitive?
Well, that's where things get strategic. One of the reports suggests that they developed something called a Business and Marketing Intelligence Unit, a BMIU. It would track global prices, look at competitor strategies, and figure out the best pricing, find that sweet spot.
Well, that's a much more data-driven approach, right? It's not just like guessing or going with your gut. It's about understanding how the market works and making decisions based on, solid information.
Precisely. And it highlights the need for a shift in thinking. It's not just about producing milk, it's about managing a global supply chain. It's much more complex.
Okay, so we've got quality and price on the table, but there's another layer here, right? Something about non-tariff measures.
Ah, yes. Those pesky NTMs. They're like hidden hurdles that can trip up even the most experienced exporters. Think regulations, labeling requirements, testing protocols, all these things that go beyond just tariffs.
Yeah, one of the reports mentioned a really interesting example, something about traceability systems. Some countries require you to track every single step of the dairy production process, like from the farm all the way to the final product. That seems like a massive undertaking, especially considering that so much of India's dairy sector is, not really that organized.
It's definitely a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. If they can meet those requirements, it actually helps them modernize their systems, build a more transparent, accountable supply chain.
So it's kind of like solving a puzzle, right? You have to figure out the specific requirements of each market and then adapt your processes to fit.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Each market is unique.
This is definitely something we'll need to explore more. But before we get totally lost in the weeds of NTMs, let's talk about something a bit more, encouraging. What about those free trade agreements, the FTAs?
Ah, yes. FTAs can be a game changer. They can reduce tariffs, simplify customs procedures, open doors to new markets. They're really helpful.
Yeah, the analysis pointed to some promising FTAs that India already has with big dairy importing countries like China and South Korea. Seems like a huge opportunity.
Absolutely. And it's not just about those existing agreements. There's potential for India to negotiate new FTAs with other promising markets.
All right, so we've got quality, price, NTMs, and FTAs. That's a lot, a whirlwind tour of the challenges and opportunities facing India's dairy export ambitions.
Yeah.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle, something really crucial, infrastructure, or more specifically, the cold chain.
Ah, the cold chain, the unsung hero of the food industry. And in India, it's an area that needs some serious attention. The reports are pretty clear about that they need better cold storage facilities, more reliable transportation networks, and they have to address those significant post-harvest losses.
Yeah, one statistic really jumped out at me. The estimated post-harvest losses of agricultural produce in India are as high as 30%. That's a crazy amount of waste.
It really highlights the importance of a robust cold chain. Even the best products, produced to the highest standards, can be ruined if they're not handled properly.
So it's not just about building more cold storage. It's about creating a whole system, right? An integrated and efficient network that moves products quickly and safely, from the farm to the consumer, both within India and across borders.
Exactly. It's a complex challenge, but the payoff is huge. A solid cold chain could not only boost their dairy exports, but it could transform their whole agricultural sector.
Sounds like we've uncovered a really critical piece of the puzzle, something that underpins everything. Investing in that cold chain, it's not just a good idea, it's essential.
I completely agree. And it goes beyond just the physical infrastructure. It's about creating a culture of quality and efficiency throughout the entire supply chain.
This is a fascinating topic, and we've only just scratched the surface. We'll delve deeper into potential solutions and explore how India can overcome these challenges to, really become a global dairy powerhouse after a short break.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about, how important India's cold chain infrastructure is if they really want to achieve those dairy export goals, right?
Right?
It's a tough one to crack. It's complex, but the reports do offer some pretty interesting potential solutions, some insights.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's not just about building more cold storage. It's got to be about creating a system that's more integrated, more efficient. So what kind of specific steps can they take to tackle that?
Well, one of the reports suggests a multi-pronged approach, like focus on developing the infrastructure itself, but also on making technological advancements. They put a lot of emphasis on improving the logistics and transportation networks within India, like internally.
Right, because I guess even if you have amazing cold storage facilities, if the transportation between the farm and the processing plant and then to the port, if that's unreliable, then the whole chain breaks down, right?
Exactly. And that's where technology can really make a difference. Research highlights the potential of using things like real-time tracking systems, devices that monitor the temperature, even blockchain technology to make the whole supply chain more transparent, more accountable.
So it's like bringing the cold chain into the digital age, giving everyone involved
Yeah.
Real-time visibility. Where's the product? What condition is it in? What other cool tech advancements are they looking at?
There's also this push to use more pre-cooling facilities, like right there at the farm level. So basically cooling the milk down super fast immediately after it's collected, which helps to, preserve the quality, make it last longer.
So it's like addressing the quality and the efficiency right from the start, right from the source.
Yeah.
Giving those small-scale dairy farmers more control, making them a bigger part of ensuring the cold chain is working properly.
Absolutely. And speaking of those small-scale farmers, remember we were talking about them, they're so vital to India's dairy industry. Their success is essential if the country wants to reach those export goals.
Right. Earlier we were talking about some of the challenges they face, operating outside of that organized sector. So let's talk solutions now. How can India empower these farmers? Not just to meet their own needs, but to really contribute to this bigger goal of becoming a global dairy force.
One of the reports goes deep into these centrally sponsored schemes, these government programs that are designed to help boost dairy production at the state level. And what's interesting is that some states haven't even used all the money that's been set aside for these schemes.
Really? That's surprising. If the money's is there, why isn't it getting to the farmers who need it? Is it bureaucratic red tape, or are people just not aware of these programs?
That's the big question, right? The research doesn't give a clear answer, but it does bring up some really important points about the need for more transparency, more accountability, and definitely some streamlining of those processes. Make sure the money is being used effectively and that it's actually reaching those small-scale producers.
It seems like there's a big opportunity there to make these schemes work better, to create a more supportive environment for those small-scale dairy farmers. But beyond just funding, what other kinds of support can really make a difference?
Training and knowledge transfer, those are huge. The research talks about setting up dedicated training centers and even mobile units that can travel to remote areas so those farmers can get the skills and the information they need to, improve what they're doing, boost the quality of their milk, and adopt more efficient production methods.
It's like giving them not just money, but the knowledge and skills to really succeed, right? To thrive in this dairy landscape that's constantly changing. Are there any particular areas of focus within those training programs?
Yeah, one that comes up over and over again is animal husbandry. The reports talk about promoting better breeding practices, better feeding, a real focus on animal health and welfare.
Makes sense. Healthy, well cared for animals, They produce better quality milk. It's better for the product, better for the system overall.
Exactly. And it's not just about animal care. The research also highlights the importance of training farmers in, basic hygiene and sanitation, the proper techniques for handling the milk, even record keeping.
So it's about building a culture of quality, a sense of professionalism throughout the entire supply chain. And it starts with those small-scale producers because they're often the first link in that chain.
Right. And let's not forget about technology here. Giving those farmers access to basic tools like milking machines, cooling tanks, even mobile apps that connect them to markets and information that can have a huge impact.
It's about bridging the gap between those traditional farming methods and the modern technology, right? Helping them stay competitive and connected.
Okay, so now let's switch gears a bit and tackle those non-tariff measures, those NTMs, the ones we talked about earlier.
Right, those NTMs. We were talking about how they can be such a barrier, right? Because they often require a really deep understanding of those specific market rules, and then you have to adapt, which can be tough.
One of the reports breaks down this really fascinating classification system for NTMs. It puts them into categories based on what they are and how they affect trade. For example, A21 refers to those tolerance limits for residues of certain substances in dairy products.
Oh, right. So that's where those strict standards for things like antibiotic residues come in. It's not just about producing a clean and safe product. It's about meeting those really specific, quantifiable standards that each country sets.
Exactly. And then you've got A31, which covers labeling requirements. That category can be a real headache for exporters because every country has their own rules about what information has to be on the label, what language, even the font size.
It's crazy how even the tiniest details can matter so much. Make or break your success in a new market.
Absolutely. And then there's A82, which focuses on testing requirements. That covers everything from the specific tests you have to do to which labs are authorized to conduct those tests.
So you can't just get any lab to do it, right? It has to be one that's officially recognized, which adds a whole other layer of complexity to the export process.
And we can't forget about A83, which is all about certification requirements. This is where exporters have to prove, with documents, that their products meet all the quality and safety standards.
Those certificates are like a product's passport, right? They're what allow them to enter those international markets.
Exactly. And 84 deals with inspection requirements, which can include, on-site visits to production facilities, audits of the documentation, even taking samples of the product.
So it sounds like you really need to be on top of things. Keep meticulous records, just to make sure you're complying with these NTMs, which are always changing. What about those traceability systems we were talking about before? Where do those fit in?
Those fall under A85, which is all about traceability and identification requirements. It really shows how important transparency and accountability are becoming in global food supply chains.
Right. It's about being able to trace a product's whole journey, from farm to fork, giving consumers the confidence that they know where their food comes from and how it was made.
And here's something really interesting. The report mentions A89, which covers NTMs related to sanitary and phytosanitary conditions, but ones that aren't specifically defined anywhere else. It's kind of a catch-all category.
Wait, so there are NTMs that aren't even clearly defined. How are exporters supposed to deal with that ambiguity?
It's tough, for sure. It really emphasizes how important it is for exporters to stay informed, do their research, and often consult with experts who specialize in these specific markets.
It sounds like navigating these NTMs requires a lot of diligence, expertise, maybe even a little bit of a detective's mindset. But beyond those specific categories, the research also mentions these broader NTMs, things like quantitative restrictions.
Right. Quantitative restrictions, things like quotas and prohibitions, those can have a big impact on how much product actually gets traded.
Quotas, those are like limits on how much of specific product you can import into a country, right?
Yeah.
So even if you have a buyer lined up, if they've already hit their quota for, say, ghee, then you're out of luck.
Exactly. And prohibitions are even tougher. That's when they completely ban certain products, usually for health or safety reasons, sometimes cultural reasons.
The research mentioned this interesting example of a seasonal prohibition. What's that about?
Oh, yeah. That's when a country might restrict imports of certain agricultural products during their own harvest season, to protect their domestic producers.
So it's not just about knowing the rules, it's about knowing when those rules apply. It adds a whole other level of complexity.
It's like a constantly shifting landscape. Exporters have to be flexible, stay informed, and be ready to adapt. But the good news is there are resources out there to help Indian exporters navigate this this web of rules and requirements.
You're talking about organizations like APETA, right?
Yeah.
The Agricultural and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority.
Exactly. APETA is doing great work in supporting and promoting Indian agricultural exports. They provide guidance, support, even financial assistance to exporters.
It's like having a team in your corner, helping you navigate the ins and outs of international trade, avoid making those costly mistakes. But even with all that support, there's still that issue of perception, right? We were talking earlier about that trust deficit that exists between some buyers and Indian exporters.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. The research brings up these concerns about whether the quality is consistent, whether the supply is reliable, and even ethical stuff related to animal welfare in India's dairy industry.
It's a good reminder that building a good reputation takes time, it takes effort, and a genuine commitment to being transparent and doing things the right way, ethically.
Definitely. And it's not just about what you say, it's about what you actually do. Consumers are paying attention, they want products that align with their values.
So it's about building a brand, but on a national scale, right? Showing the world that India is committed to quality, sustainability, ethical production.
Precisely. And it's about telling the story, highlighting what's unique about Indian dairy. The heritage, the flavors, the traditions.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here, looking at these challenges and opportunities from so many different angles.
Yeah.
Now, in our final part, we'll shift our focus to solutions and see how India can overcome these hurdles to claim its rightful place as a global dairy powerhouse. Okay, so we're back and we're ready to really dig into those solutions. We've looked at the whole landscape, the hurdles India's facing, even those super complex non-tariff measures. It's a lot.
And one thing that really stands out is that this isn't just about numbers and economics. It's about people. It's about sustainability. It's about, showing the world what makes Indian dairy special.
Totally. So let's talk about those solutions, those concrete steps they can take to really make a splash in that global dairy market. What really jumped out at you from all this research?
One thing that I saw pop up in a bunch of the reports is this focus on indigenous breeds of cattle. India has all these amazing native breeds like the Gur and the Sahiwal, and they're known for being really resilient, and the quality of the milk is excellent.
Yeah, I remember reading about those breeds. They're like almost legendary.
Yeah.
But how does that translate into a global advantage? I mean, how does that help them compete?
Well, it's about, playing to your strengths. India has these unique breeds, right? So if they invest in breeding programs, support the farmers who are raising those breeds, they can produce milk with these distinct qualities that you can't find anywhere else.
So it's like creating a signature product, something that's uniquely Indian.
Exactly. It's like, you wouldn't expect the best Italian wine to be made from grapes grown in California, right?
Perfect analogy. It's about that connection, the land, the breed, the final product. But they still have to meet those global standards we talked about, those quality standards.
Of course, yeah. And that's where another opportunity comes in organic dairy farming. A bunch of the reports suggest promoting that.
Oh, interesting. Organic's definitely a growing market. People are looking for those products more and more. So could that be a way for India to tap into that premium market, get a higher price for their products?
That's exactly it. Organic certification usually means a higher price point. And it also aligns with, those growing consumer concerns about sustainability and ethical sourcing.
So it's a win-win. Appeals to a specific market, and it also encourages those more environmentally friendly practices. We talked about tech in the cold chain. Are there any other areas where technology can really play a role?
Definitely. Modernizing those processing facilities, adopting cutting-edge technology at every stage of the supply chain, that's huge.
I get how that can improve efficiency, consistency, all that. But what about those small-scale farmers? Will they be able to keep up with all this new technology?
That's a good question. But the research does address that. They talk about promoting the use of, things like milking machines, other relatively simple technologies that can make a big difference in productivity and hygiene, even on the smallest farms.
Right. And I also saw some stuff about mobile apps that can connect farmers to markets, give them real-time info on pricing and demand.
Exactly, putting that power right in their hands. And of course, let's not forget about those free trade agreements, those FTAs. Utilizing those agreements with countries like China, South Korea, and exploring new partnerships, that's a huge opportunity for expansion.
It's like building these pathways, to get those amazing Indian dairy products out onto the world stage. But even with the best product, all the certifications, access to those markets, they still need to get noticed, right?
That's where marketing comes in. The reports recommend a mix of, traditional approaches going to international trade fairs, things like that, but also a strong digital strategy.
I love the idea of showcasing those products at global events. It's a chance to really tell that story, connect with buyers face to face, and really put Indian dairy on the map.
And the digital space is huge. A strong online presence, engaging with people on social media, using e-commerce platforms that can connect those Indian producers directly with a global audience.
So it's about blending the old and the new, right? Those time-honored traditions, the flavors, and then, using the power of technology to reach people all over the world.
It's a powerful combination.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I'm honestly blown away by the potential of India's dairy industry, and I have a much deeper appreciation for how complex this journey is.
It has been a fascinating exploration, and while there are, definitely challenges ahead, the potential rewards are huge.
And what's really striking is that this is about so much more than just economics. It's about empowering people, creating a more sustainable agricultural system, and sharing those unique Indian dairy traditions with the world.
And hey, maybe one day you'll be sipping a cup of chai made in India whole milk powder, really enjoying the flavor and knowing that you're supporting something really special.
I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of those made in India labels on our dairy products. And thanks to this deep dive, we'll all have a better understanding of the story behind those labels. Thanks for joining us.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of Got Milk, the Indian Dairy Context. Subscribe to the podcast. And a reminder, this episode was brought to you by Shunya Agritech, India's first animal nutrition and well-being focused organization. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.